An economic giant, but a political dwarf. That is how the EU is often described on the world stage. While the EU has significant economic power, its slow decision-making and internal fighting make it ineffective politically. One of the weak points of the EU is that unlike the great powers of China or the United States, the EU doesn't have any military power of its own. In this video, we will discuss the current state of the European Union's defense policy, its weaknesses, and its potential solutions. So how is the EU's defense structured? Most of Europe's defense is covered by NATO, but the EU does have its own defense policy though, called the Common Security and Defense Policy. It focuses on developing military capabilities through collective action between member states for crisis management operations that are not handled by NATO. Basically, it is there to promote peace and stability in Europe and around the world. There are over 4,000 people involved, with 21 operations around the globe, of which 9 are military. One example is Operation Atalanta, an EU naval force that aims to deter, prevent, and repress acts of piracy and armed robbery off the Somali coast. Also part of the CSDP is the EU Battle Group, a military unit of 1,500 troops that can be used for EU missions. But even though they were created 15 years ago in 2007, they have never been deployed, thereby clearly highlighting the first CSDP weakness, unanimity. It is very difficult for member states to come together on a unified foreign policy due to their political differences. While a country on the western border of the EU might not be concerned about Russian aggression, a country like Poland certainly would be. This leads to internal conflict and very little movement. Second, the military capabilities of the CSDP are still very limited. The EU can't leverage any real hard power or stand up to any military power on its own. Even when it comes to delivering military hardware to Ukraine, the EU has no influence. Just look at the recent issue where EU countries took forever to agree whether to send Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine. As a solution, some have suggested creating an EU army as a way of addressing these issues and improving European security.
Aber wir sollten, das sage ich sehr bewusst auch aus der Entwicklung der letzten Jahre, wir sollten an der Vision arbeiten, eines Tages auch eine echte europäische Armee zu schaffen.
The idea doesn't come out of the blue either. In its early days, the founders of the EU tried to set up the European Defence Community in 1952, but fears of an armed Germany made it impossible. The idea of a European army also has quite a lot of popular support. According to the Eurobarometer, over 55% of Europeans are in favor of an EU army. That isn't to say that creating an EU army would be easy. Some member states are very reluctant to hand over any military sovereignty to a supranational EU. Not to mention there are lots of challenges, such as language, who controls it, procurement, and NATO. In our opinion, an EU army has many benefits, as it is better equipped to represent the EU interests on a global stage. Member states can also find synergies in terms of military hardware, as not every country would need to procure their own tanks and aircraft. Who knows, maybe each EU country could have a specialty. For example, Italy and Greece can specialize on naval capabilities, such as destroyers and aircraft carriers. France, Germany, and Spain can specialize on aircraft capabilities, with a new generation fighter jet. And Poland can specialize on ground forces, such as tanks and armored vehicles. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and whether you would like a longer video to dive into this topic. Also, please consider supporting our channel through Patreon. These videos take a lot of effort and investment, so any help is greatly appreciated. And of course, a big shout out to our existing members already. Thank you very much for your support.